Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be making a flower arrangement, and sadly, it's that time of year again. It's Thanksgiving season, and unfortunately in my life, I've had a significant loss a couple days before Thanksgiving, and here we are again. I have lost another person in my circle, and this time they were a person of great courage. They were a military veteran, and I'm bringing a bouquet that I'm making to the funeral ceremony because I understand it's going to be indoors, and he chose to be cremated, so there's not going to be many decorations in the form of fresh flowers, nothing like that, but it's going to be at a funeral home where people can come and pay their respects. And I'm sorry to be so gloomy, but these things are important to talk about because it affects everybody's life. If you've never made a flower arrangement before, then I hope this is very helpful to you. And it's also going to be made to last because it's not fresh flowers. It is silk flowers. The person I'll be giving it to can keep it for as long as they want. So these are some flowers I picked up at Walmart. I have some artificial baby's breath here, some roses, and these come with baby breath as well. Cherry blossoms. And I have a couple more, and the point of this bouquet, it's going to be all white. I even have a white planter, and it's plastic in case it gets dropped or falls. Sparkle Tule. I also found this multicolored bouquet, but in it are these beautiful white flowers. So I'm going to be using these types of flowers from this bouquet, and I won't be using the blue ones. And I also bought this bouquet, and I'll be using, I want to say these are like a magnolia, I believe. So these are really pretty too. I won't be using the other colors. I'll just be using the sprinkling of magnolia and hydrangea. And to add greenery to the mix, I have some eucalyptus and these fun little green things. I was going to take these fern-like structures out and then just use these kind of greeneries. The cost for everything, including the styrofoam, is approximately $65. The first thing I'm going to be doing, and I do this for every wreath and floral bouquet I make, I'm going to put down this plastic drop cloth that's found in the painter's section of hardware stores or Walmart. It's just plastic to cover your work surface because the foam and the artificial flowers, they really make a mess. So what I'm doing is I'm just rolling it out to the size of my table, and then I will go ahead and just cut to length. The other tool I have are these Husky cutters, and these cut through the artificial stems nicely. And finally, a secret tip for when you're building out any kind of flower arrangement that you'll be putting outside. This one will be only indoors. If you were going to put this on a grave in a cemetery outdoors, this is super epoxy. I found this at a hardware store, but it is skin and eye irritant, and so you want to be very careful when you use it. In the past, when I've made outdoor flower arrangements, I make them in my garage. I set up card tables. I cover them with the plastic, just like here. And I use this with the garage door open so that the fumes aren't affecting me. I did want to include that tip in case you want to secure the flowers and make sure that they're glued down so they can withstand elements like wind if the pot was to go outdoors. And last but not least, I have a cup of tea. And in the cup of tea, I have chamomile with cream. Another reason I use this plastic is when I'm done, I roll everything up in it and then I just dispose of it. So there's no mess to clean up off of my work surface. What I do is I start with the tallest plants that are going to go into the middle of the planter or bouquet or vase or whatever structure you're using for the container. Another tip I have is when I went to Walmart, I held up the bouquets together. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't overbuying the flowers and that I was only buying enough to fill the container, and I was also not buying too little. And in this set of flowers here, we can see that the cherry blossoms are the tallest. I'm going to be starting with the cherry blossoms. I'm going to set it by the side of the planter, and then I'm going to see the height of it. Now, I'm also going to take the next flower, which will be the roses, and I have 2 bushes of these, because these are really the main flower, the main focal point, I would say, in the bouquet. So I'm just going to see the height that I need to cut the cherry blossoms out. By holding these together, you can see how much height this plant is going to have over the roses. You want to have it up just a little bit, just to give it a little height in the center. So you just play around with it, and then if you were to, you know, put the roses around it in the pot, how high is it going to be? So I've decided that I want this to be about this much. Little paper ruler here. That is approximately I would say 3 inches at most. So that gives me a starting point as to how high above the roses I want the plant to be. If I just simply set the roses up next to my planter, you can see they tower over the planter. And of course, you're going to cut the stems down. So you just want to keep that in mind. You want to take a good measurement of how high overall you want the planter to go with the flowers in it. And in my case, I want the cherry blossom stems to be about 3 inches or less, no more than that, above the roses. So now, having figured that out, I'm going to measure one of these stems of the roses. These measure 10 inches. So in order to achieve the height frame I'm looking for, I need to make sure that I trim these to no more than 13 inches. And some of these stems are quite long. Like even this small one on the side is 15 inches. So I want to make sure I'm trimming them to 13. So it's a little bit of math. A lot of times I'll just guesstimate too. Oops, that one just came off. But I don't want to guesstimate when it's something this important, and I want to bring it as a respectful gesture. I'm going to start at the base of the stem, as close as I can get to it. It's kind of hard because these are a big mouthed tool, and it snips right off. I hardly put any pressure on that. These Husky tools are really good and handy. So again, I'm going to measure this, and I'm just going to see how tall it is. And this one, with the twig at the top, comes to 15. I know I don't want 15 inches. So I'm not going to trim down the bottom, because as you see, the bottom is already close to the flowers. I'm going to trim the twig down, and I'm going to trim it down by 2 inches. I'm going to measure the 2 inches, and then I'm just going to snip it right where that was. Very easy to cut through. Also, because I have my own greenery I will be using, I don't want to overpower this with greenery because it is a white bouquet representing peace. I don't want to have a lot of this in it. I bought the greenery I want to use for it. So I'm actually going to cut this off. Now I do have a basket somewhere in this house with snippets of these type of items, and when I make wreaths, I keep them aside, or even sometimes greeting cards or things of that nature, and I use these in other art projects. So the next stem, keeping in mind that I need a 13-inch stem, so at the top of this here, you can see to about here is 13. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to start here. I'm going to snip it here. Now I also see that there is some greenery, so I'm going to cut that out. There's a twig here that I don't need, so I'm going to cut that off. And let me take a measurement again. Let's see here. 13 would be about here. So I'm left with this piece. So now I have two pieces that I can start with. Then they have this one, which is a little smaller, and that's okay. I'm going to set it aside for now, and I may end up using it somewhere in the bouquet. I have to see at the end. I still have one floral left on this bush. So I measure out 13 to the top of the flower, and it comes to right here where these two stems meet. Now we have 3 stems to start with. So next I'm going to go ahead and open my foam, and I get this really spongy foam. It's called dry foam, and when I use these for real flowers, I can wet this and it becomes like a soaked block, and it helps keep the flowers alive longer. It's absorbent. It cuts through really easily. I'm just using a pair of scissors. I'm taking the top part off that would stick out of the top. And as you can see, it doesn't completely fill it up, but you want it to be down a couple of inches from the top. And then you're going to pack it. You're going to pack it with that leftover piece. And then you're going to start cutting up some more and packing it in. That packed in. And I'm also going to do on the sides there where it's empty space. Sometimes you have to use your whole body weight to get it in there, but that's the point. You want it nice and tight in there. Another tip here is you don't want to use your best clothes for this because you will get dirty, especially with the styrofoam. It makes a mess. So I've gone ahead and finished all that. As you can see my fingerprints because I had to really force it down in there. But it's really nice and structurally sound now so that it's not going to fall apart. I'm going to start with my 3 cherry blossoms that I cut down to size. I have 2 that have a fake branch at the top, and then I have 1 that's a flower at the top. So my middle starting point is going to be this flower here, and I'm going to find the center of this styrofoam, and I'm just going to push it down in. And you'll see I just pushed it down to here. I didn't keep pushing it down, but it's not going anywhere. It's nice and sturdy, and I can't pull it up without force. That's when you know it's good. And then I'm going to find a place to put these, and I'm going to put them at an angle, like a diagonal. So starting with the middle point, I'm going to go to the side about 2 inches over, and I'm going to put that one. And I'm going to make it the same height as this one. See, so they're the same height. And the same for the next side. Now I'm going to start on my roses. Next, what I'm going to do is, there are multiple roses on this one stem. I'm just going to take my tool and I'm going to cut all of the stems off at the base right here. And I'm going to do that for both of the bushes of the roses. So I'm going to get nice and down in there, as low as I can get. Now what I'm going to do for each rose, I'm going to take off the greenery, and they slide right off. You don't even have to cut those. Oops. Sometimes the flower heads pop off too, but they pop on very easily. You just insert it right into this part here, it goes right back in. Now if you were using these outdoor, you might even want to take the time to put a little hot glue on the end and put all the heads back on before making the arrangement, so that way when the wind blows, the flower heads don't pop off into the air and go airborne and get all over, especially if it's a cemetery. When you're picking out flowers also, just note that sometimes when you buy the bouquet at a store, some of the flowers can actually be missing. So you want to make sure that when you're purchasing them, you don't have any stems on a bush that look like this. That means a flower head is missing, and that's happened to me on occasion. And, you know, some of these flower stems can be a lot of money. You don't want to be out money missing flowers and having to go back to the store to get more. So it looks like I have 10 of these total with the white florals around the rose. And then I have 8 of the plain rose. And I just want to make sure they're all the same size, because I can see now that they're not. But they're within a half an inch of each other, so it's really not going to be a terrible thing that they're not the same size. And these seem to be pretty much all the same size, so I don't have to worry about really trimming any down. Here's one, for example, that's way longer, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that one. Starting with the roses that have this little, I don't even know what this is called. I guess it's supposed to mimic baby breath. I'm going to use these to decorate first. So I'm going to evenly space these out around the middle section of the planter. And what you want to do is, you don't want to be the same height as the cherry blossoms, okay? You want to be a little lower than the cherry blossoms. As I said before, we're trying to get the cherry blossoms to be no more than 3 inches above any of the flowers. So you just want to be mindful of that. And you're just going to go around. And now that I placed my first one, we're going to place them all at the same height. Also notice how the fake baby breath is sticking outward from the center of the pot. I'm not sticking it inside the pot, in other words. You want to make it look as realistic as possible. I'm turning this pot around as I go. Next, without starting on the other roses, next I'm going to take this baby breath. It's a filler. It came in like a little bundle bouquet. They call it a baby's breath pick. So with this type, actually I didn't even realize this when I bought it, but this type is all together in the middle here, and I can't separate them. I was going to separate them and put them in individually, but they fold downward. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them in one spot, and then I'm going to arrange them at the top, folded downward. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to try to get it as close as possible to my cherry blossom in the middle. And then this will fold in the middle all around the roses. Now that I got that in there, I'm going to go ahead and just arrange them in between the rose heads. So that's what it looks like. Now I can place the other roses around. I still have some big flowers left from these other bushes. So I'm going to use the roses to fill in around the perimeter. And when I do that, I'm going to go below the baby's breath now. So you can see I'm not going to the same height anymore. Now I'm going below it. And I have 8, so I have to be mindful of where I'm placing them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go side to side. So I started here, now I'm going to go to the other side across from that one, so that it's an even distribution of these. Now I'm going to put 2 on this side. And 2 over here. And I have 2 left, and I'm just going to kind of fill in where I think a couple more should go. There's one here that has kind of like a notch at the base of it. I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. Now I have these 2 bushes. So I'm going to be taking off all the flowers I plan on using. This piece here also has this beautiful eucalyptus on it. I'm going to use that as well. This piece from the red bouquet came with this little tiny eucalyptus, but it's the same color as the eucalyptus from the blue bouquet. So that will be nice, because when I was picking out the flowers, they had all kinds of different color eucalyptus, and some of it looked very fake, but thankfully this actually kind of looks a little real. It's a pretty color, and it doesn't look as plasticky as the other stuff I found. So to give it just a splash of color, I'm not taking this leaf here off of the hydrangea, and I'm leaving the eucalyptus on it. And I'm going to put it in the middle, and I'm going to put it next to the cherry blossom. Just sticking above, just to give it that little lift. The 2 hydrangeas have the little eucalyptus on them. Now I have 2 each of these. I think these are the magnolias. Because I don't want it to be overpowered with greenery, I'm just going to hold this where I want it to go and just see how it looks. And if I think it's too much greenery, I'll take the greenery off. So I'm just using 1 stem of greenery per flower. I'm going to go in the middle again, because these are big flowers, mind you. So see the size difference between this and a rose? That's why I'm putting them in the middle. And I'm keeping them at a height above the roses. So that's how that one looks. And I think I'm fine with the greenery, because it's not too overpowering. I want to check my placement of that magnolia, and I want to do the same thing on the other side. And there it is. Now I have 2 of these. They're supposed to be the same flower, but they look quite different. And that's okay, because in real bouquets, you're going to get an assortment of all kinds of flowers. Now, I don't like the leaf on this one, but I kind of like the leaf on this one. So I'm going to take this leaf off and just use this flower. So now I'm going to see if there's any openings at the top that I missed. I'm just going to look for them, and I see an opening on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in with that one flower. And then I'm going to look for any spot where this would look good with the greenery. And I'm just going to hold up the bouquet and look down in it. And I think it will look good right here. Right where I'm putting it. And I think it does go with the greenery. So we're going to put it right there. Once again, we're not going to go under the roses. We're going to go at the top, and I'm tucking in the leaf. I like the greenery, but it needed to be tucked in, where this one, I think, is okay sticking out. That's what it's looking like. Okay, now I have one piece of eucalyptus, and I have 3 of these fun things. I'm going to go ahead, and I don't think I need the greenery from these. I also have a few eucalyptus stems, so I don't want to use those greens from here and make it way too much. And you also don't want to have 20 different greens either when you're making a white bouquet. Now these I'm going to stick in, and I'm going to use them as the same height of the roses, so you can see how that looks there. And I only have 3, so now I want to make sure that they're a triangle. You want a triangle. So here's one point, and you want to make sure that they're evenly dispersed like a triangle. So here's one, and I'm going to go across from this one here to over here. There. I think that looks really pretty. And now I have these little berries, and I'm debating whether to use the top leaf stems. I think I like them. But again, like I said, you know, just play around with it, because you never know how it's going to look until you try it. And these remind me so much of the top leaf here. And I'm going to use these to fill in around the bottom. I think I'm going to keep the greens, because if you look, it's not overbearing, and it's matching the other green colors. And I'm going to use one here to fill in. And these you want to put under the roses, like that. And then I'm going to use it on the other side where there's a gap. Sometimes that happens. So also to note, you want to pull up on the greenery to make sure it surrounds it, hugs it, so to speak. There. That's pretty. So the eucalyptus stem, there's only one, and I didn't like the leaves on that, so I took those off. But I'm not going to put that in yet, because I still have other eucalyptus stems. First, I want to go through these little greens, and I also want to take off the little fern pieces, the yellows, because that wouldn't look very good in a white bouquet. As I was saying before, be careful when you buy flowers. You might end up losing some of the pieces or the flower heads. Here's an example of that. Look at that. It's all stick and there's just one little greenery. And that's the pitfall of buying greens, silk florals and greens and things. You never know if something's missing until you get home sometimes, and then you can't even use it. It's supposed to look like this, but unfortunately it was stripped off. So these little ferns have to be cut off. They don't just pull off. So I'm left with 6 bunches of these greeneries. If it turns out that there's like a bare spot at the end, or I didn't do a good job filling in a section, I can always use that one piece just as a fill-in. Because I have 6 of these, I'm just going to go right around the pot and disperse them evenly. And they're meant as a filler, so again, you're going to want to put them down below the height of the roses. You want to always coordinate the side, the placements of the greenery. It's starting to look fuller and nicer. I have these 2 roses here that are really close together, and I'm going to just stick that one stem right there, as you can see. I went ahead and trimmed up that empty stalk And now I'm just going to go through there. And that's what I mean. You never know where you could use just a tad bit of something. So things are worth saving until the end just to see what happens. I have the eucalyptus, and this is a wisteria bouquet. First, I'm going to try to find a place for this one lonely eucalyptus, just to see if there's a place that I think it might look best. And in the middle of the bouquet at the top, you see I have 2 eucalyptus, and there's nothing in the middle. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick it right down in the middle of it and just let it fill in the middle section. And then I'm going to take the other eucalyptus and I'm going to cut off all the branches. One tall one, and then I have 4 filler pieces that will go around the bottom. And I think what I'm going to do with the tall one is just put it right next to that other one I just used. And you'll see it gives it some height while maintaining the same flow as the other greens. And because I have 4 of these, I'll just go around and fill in. It's challenging the more flowers you have because you run out of visible foam to use, and now you're guessing. Still have the wisteria vine, so I'm going to go ahead and cut all the branches off of that. These have a totally different looking greenery. I'm just going to cut the greenery off, and I'm going to put one down in the middle of the bouquet because it is a cascading plant. But I'm making sure that I'm not really covering any other flower. I'm kind of going in between the flowers. There. So I used 5 to fill in and cascade around. And then I have 2 left. And I'm just going to look around and see if I have any obvious gaps in the bouquet. I kind of have one right here. So I'm going to put one there and take the leaves off first. And that will hang over the side of the planter. And then on the other side, or close to it actually, but still far away enough, I'm going to put the other one. And I'm going to make the bow between the 2 hanging wisteria. So I'm just wrapping the tulle around the planter pot, making sure that the tails are long enough to turn into a bow. Then I'm going to cut a second piece long enough to turn into a bow. So here you see I have tied this into a bow around the container. The second piece, I'm going to thread it up through the knot I made on the first piece. It's supposed to be glitter tulle, but there's no glitter in it. Has a little shimmer to it, but not what I was expecting. And then I'm just going to tie it into a bow, just like if you were tying sneaker laces. I pushed it up into the planter and I left the bow out, as you can see. That way it can't slide down the pot anymore. I don't have to worry about gluing it. It's there nice and secure. Made the bow. Now it has some long tails on it, so I'm just going to cut them off. Now that is a handmade amateur. I am not a professional floral arranger or designer or anything like that. But if I can do this, anyone can do this. And I think it looks pretty good. I hope you learned a tip or two today. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.